Laurentian University, teach at the MacEwan School of Architecture. And Blaine Nichols and I have been the professional advisors to the Sudbury 2050 competition. We want to welcome everyone. We want to welcome our moderator, Lisa Rochon. I'll come to introducing Lisa in a moment. We want to welcome our jury facilitator, who is architect Tone Dreesen, OAA former president. He's president of Dreesen Cardinal Architects in Ottawa. We want to thank our community stakeholders who have joined us for this. And tonight we have a mix of people on the jury. It's a jury of 15 that has been going through the open and the student categories. So to get to this 13 team finalists for tonight and tomorrow night, our jury guests are Marianne McKenna, Dee Dee Taylor-Eustace, Bruce Mao, and Jeff McCausland. And I'll come to introduce the full jury in a moment. And our community guests and stakeholders from Sudbury tonight are Jeff McIntyre, Dr. Peter Beckett, and Debbie Nicholson. Jeff is as a marketing consultant and business improvement area BIA in Sudbury. Dr. Peter Beckett has been working on many things, including the regreening of Sudbury for decades, and he's at Laurentian University. And Debbie Nicholson is president and CEO of the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce. So I want to welcome all of our panelists for this evening. And it is a panelist thing. It's not the jury this evening. You're really presenting for the 5 presenters, and then we're having a discussion and feedback from people that are on the panel. And then we return to the final jury down the road. So the Sudbury competition, 2050 competition, was launched at the MacEwan School of Architecture. Registration opened February 27th, 2020. And at that time, we had more than 500 registrants from 28 countries. So people kind of signed up, were excited about it. And then I think the complexity of reading and delivering on the brief, as all of you who are presenting tonight have, meant that we ended up having 100 team submissions in the final, and the submissions closed for that on August 28th, 2020. So in those 6 months, we extended it a bit because of COVID. We issued an addendum, and then we saw that 100 teams, which is still several hundred people, made the final submission addressing all 6 of the criteria that we're judging submissions on that are listed on the website and in the brief. The team submissions have been considered by an international panel of jurists. So I'm just going to put a slide up of the jury. So as I said, Blaine Nichols on the left and myself have been the professional advisors for the program. We started talking about this last November. Jury facilitator then is Tone Dreesen, who, as I say, is OAA, FRAIC, and president of Dreesen Cardinal Architects in Ottawa. And then the competition jurors from left to right, it's a jury of 15, a big jury, but we had lots of submissions and the 2 categories, and then the People's Choice Award. So Shannon Bassett is teaching, she's a professor at the Architecture School, MacEwan School of Architecture. Mayor Brian Bigger is the mayor of Greater Sudbury, and he has joined us. David Fortin is the director of the MacEwan School of Architecture, and he's been part of the jury and part of the formation of this with us from the beginning. Victor Kolinchik is an architect, lives in Winnipeg, works for Architecture 49, and he's on the jury. Bruce Mao is the founder of Bruce Mao Studio and co-founder of the Massive Change Network, chief design officer also at Freeman in Chicago. And Jeff McCausland is I've known Jeff as a musician first, but he's a Greater Sudbury councillor and has been part of the jury discussion throughout the time of the submissions. Cheryl McEwen is the owner of Make My Day Foods, Inc., and part of the MacEwan International Advisory Board. Deb McIntosh is the second counselor on the jury from Greater Sudbury Councillor, and has worked lots on regreening with things like Rainbow Roots in the past. Marianne McKenna is a partner in KPMB Architects in Toronto. She's an OAA, Order of Canada, and part of the MacEwan International Advisory Board as well. And then Jason McLennan, he's the CEO of McLennan Design, the chairman for the International Living Future Institute, and the author of the Living Building Challenge, which many of you know. Tristan O'Gorman is a graduate student at the MacEwan School of Architecture in the first year of the master's, and he's been on the jury along with another student to balance that out. Lisa Rochon is also the author, the director of City Lab, the architecture critic formerly for the Globe and Mail national newspaper, and the founder of City Lab in Toronto, and she's also tonight's moderator. So Lisa is doing double duty tonight. And Dee Dee Taylor-Eustace is the founder of Taylor Hanna Architect, OAA, MRAIC, and has done much to help the advisory board kind of take these initiatives on. Ted Wilson is a professor at the MacEwan School of Architecture and a member of the OAA and teaches courses on sustainability. And Brittany Otley-Perrott is a graduate student, also master's level at the MacEwan School of Architecture. So that was the 15 people getting together on the board and have been going through, as I say, we divided up to look at the open category. And tonight we have the student category with 5 projects that are going to be presented tonight. Next, I'll introduce then Lisa Ronchon. Lisa is a city builder, an architectural advisor, and founder of City Lab in Toronto, Canada. Through public space initiatives, Lisa works to revitalize neglected parts of the city and empower communities through amazing, equitable design. For more than a decade, Lisa was the award-winning architecture critic for the National Globe and Mail newspaper, where she defended and championed the cause of inspired, innovative architecture from Toronto to Medellin to Copenhagen to New York. As a voice in the world of architecture and urban design, Lisa is the author of Up North, a book on Northern architecture in Canada, where Canada's architecture meets the land from 2005. She's contributed numerous essays and articles for books and journals such as Alphabet City, Canadian Architect, and Architectural Record in New York City. Lisa is the 2-time winner of the National Newspaper Awards and the recipient of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada's Award for Journalism. She has served as the design director for the $65 million Canadian Canoe Museum near Peterborough, Ontario. She's been the design chair for the international competition Winter Stations along the eastern beaches in Toronto, which is still going strong. And she's been a nominator for the International Aga Khan Award in Architecture. Lisa holds an honors degree in journalism and French from Carleton University and an MA in urban design studies from the University of Toronto. In 2018, as I mentioned, Lisa joined the MacEwan International Advisory Board for Laurentian University MacEwan School of Architecture. And tonight she's our moderator for Sudbury 2050 student category presentations. And like all jurors, they've all seen the projects in detail. So she's going to be familiar with much of your work tonight and again tomorrow. So without further ado, welcome, Lisa. You might be muted.
Thank you very much, Terry. A very warm welcome to everybody zooming in tonight, this evening, for the next couple of hours, and a special welcome to all of the students who are here with us this evening, who have produced quite remarkable work and who are gathering from around the world, really. And hats off to producing your schemes and your visions in spite of challenging and surreal times in which we're living right now. Ideas competitions are bold and audacious, and ultimately I think of them as acts of optimism. Really, since the ancient Greeks, human beings have been trying to create and design and produce livable, joyful cities, from the ancient Greeks through to the early modernists, to the Bauhaus, right through to the UN-sponsored competitions for reinvention of cities devastated by war or natural disasters. I happen to be quite a fan of the Sudbury 2050 Ideas competition. One, because it harnesses the power of ideas from thinkers from around the world and bringing to bear those ideas to a city, a mining city, a global center of nickel production, now well onto its way of healing, but a city that needs a vision for an animated, joyful downtown that connects to its region. I'm interested in Sudbury 2050 for the power of its ideas, but also for the way that it connects to authority, the authority of the MacEwan School of Architecture, which has it's still young, but over the last 5 years has proven to Canadians and to people around the world that it is brave and it is a place of bold thinking, inspired by Indigenous leaders and elders' wisdom, ways to live lightly on the land. And this competition connects the authority of MacEwan also to the authority of the civic leaders in Sudbury. So I was very delighted to be part of the jury and participate on a jury with the mayor of Sudbury, Brian Baker, and with city councilors and business and cultural leaders. I want to begin by just covering off some of the main fundamental points of this Sudbury 2050 Urban Designs competition. What is it? Many of us are very familiar with it. It really is the idea initiated by the MacEwan School of Architecture to open up a global conversation about what Sudbury can begin. Very critical timing as Sudbury and its civic leaders move into authoring a new master plan for 2050 vision. I think that what's important is to look at the range and opportunities presented by the competition. And competitors were asked to consider the possibilities, the art of architecture. What would it be like to place a new art gallery, a new library, to locate an arena and conference center in the downtown? How can you connect pedestrian and cycle networks, not only throughout the city, but to the region? Entrants were asked to imagine the greening of the city, fundamental and progressive ideas of sustainability. This is a language that meaningful practice is already engaging, and what we wanted to hear from young people from around the world and from professionals around the world to bring their thoughts to bear. There was an emphasis on how to connect regionally to Lake Ramsey and other pathways outside of the city. And finally, the idea was to create something that could be communicated in a compelling way to citizens of Sudbury, but also to people tonight and tomorrow night during these presentations. So as we go through the evening, we'll be looking at submissions as they are presented by each team. So tonight we're going to be hearing from 5 teams from around the world, and they will be looking at their ideas. Let's see what their ideas about culturally diverse populations, indigenous populations, listening to how they are interpreting the stories from the North. I want to introduce tonight's panelists again, just so we're clear. And the panelists for tonight's sessions will be responding to the submissions as they are made by each of the teams. So the jury members and tonight's panelists are Marianne McKenna, Dee Dee Taylor Eustace, Bruce Mao, Jeff McCausland. And I wanted to mention as well, community stakeholders again. Terry's already mentioned Jeff McIntyre, marketing consultant, business improvement area for Sudbury, Dr. Peter Beckett, Laurentian University in Sudbury, Debbie Nicholson, President and CEO, Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce. And I would like to get to some exciting news, which is the competition prizes. So they're in the open category. You're going to be hearing from them tomorrow night. 8 finalists will be presenting, and the grand competition prize is $50,000. This evening for the student category, the grand prize is $10,000. And there is the People's Choice Award, which is open and available to vote for this evening up until tomorrow night. And the People's Choice Award will be given to one recipient, either students or the professionals, and that prize is for $3,000. So I think that we are pretty much ready to go to the presentations, in which each team will have 10 minutes to present their ideas, and then there will be a response, maybe some questions from the panelists. So I think that I'll ask then for a screen share as we come to the first team, and I'll just mention that I will be emphasizing actually the team numbers because this will be helpful for voting for the People's Choice. And so I think we can begin. I'm excited. So first up then is team 0351, Collective City from Canada. Presenting tonight is Jesse Martin.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, my name is Jesse Martin. I want to thank you so much for welcoming me into your community and providing a platform to talk about this very meaningful project for me. I grew up in the suburbs of Southern Ontario and have fond childhood memories of Sudbury through school trips out there to learn about geography and the land. On these trips, I can recall visiting places like Science North and, of course, the Big Nickel. I was lucky enough to have my mother dedicate much of her time to support my passion for hockey, which involved yearly tournaments up in Sudbury. I'm certain neither of us missed the 6 a.m. practices and time spent in the bitter cold, but it taught me many lessons. I learned that if I took on whatever role benefited the team, whether big or small, the collective could become something far greater than the sum of its parts. I believe these same principles can be applied to the growth of Sudbury. Using this approach, this proposal looks to integrate industry, resources, the economy, and the environment into one collective city. Sudbury has a long history as a resource-rich economy with an intimate connection with the land. This proposal seeks to build off this history while welcoming new waves of industry. With an emphasis on renewable resources, we can strengthen the community through closed-loop systems as a catalyst for diversification and growth with a collective goal in mind: physical and mental sustainability for both people and the built environment. Natural resources are at the forefront of this proposal. They're treated as generators that connect the local with the global, industry with the public. This allows us to celebrate the land we live on and its resources while bringing together a variety of flows and exchanges. This will be achieved through the creation of resource magnets. Magnets can be defined as community hubs that fuse together local industry, global innovation, and public interaction. They're spaces that synthesize architectural typologies as hybrids rather than segregating them by way of strict zoning regulations. Magnets are subcategorized as majors and minors. Majors are larger resource hubs that serve as nodes, providing a multitude of amenities, including production, recreation, and dwelling. These are hubs that produce goods that extend from the local environment to the global economy. Minors are offshoots of majors, supporting hubs, or independent anchors specific to local neighborhoods. Through linking NACs, the city can be treated as an organic system characterized by networks that connect interrelated magnets. Magnets will infuse the natural processes of resources with public life. For example, we can use selective wood harvesting from the local forest for building materials while maintaining our connection with nature. Trees can then be locally manufactured, supporting jobs, while developing innovative carbon capturing systems by using timber construction, including mass timber in larger buildings. The waste from wood manufacturing can then support a district biomass energy system that connects to the research and innovation sector. In the end, sustainable materials support the growth of the community through jobs, building supplies, energy systems, and research that can have global impacts. Magnets will be arranged in 3 simple patterns. 1, linear, whereby magnets exist in sequence along green networks. 2, clusters, in which locations of magnets are staggered and varied. And 3, hierarchical, where magnets are separated by majors and minors, in which secondary and tertiary magnets support the majors. These 3 strategies are combined to create a logical system of interrelated networks that extend beyond the downtown core. This includes daylighting creeks, so Junction Creek becomes a prominent feature of the city. We can add new greenways that create safe and comfortable travel by bike and by foot. This is supported by light rail transit lines that are powered by locally produced biofuel. This results in one collective form of green networks and magnets. The existing rail line will be decommissioned. Many existing buildings will remain. Bus routes can continue to operate using biofuel. Existing buildings will be greened by adding rooftop parks and public spaces. We will build off the existing and proposed Sudbury magnets, such as the McEwen School of Architecture and the Junction, and we'll add new green magnets. Magnets will be connected through greenways, with Junction Creek becoming a major artery and connective tissue. Busy roads are converted to light rail lines, and community commons will be added along networks. Each micro community will have the opportunity to develop their commons as they best see fit, whether it be public park space, pottery studios, cafes, or local businesses. This gives agency back to the community while layering in public engagement. Bike lanes are then added to support major green arteries. Trees are sprinkled along these networks. The city is further greened, connecting the urban environment with nature. This is supported by a car-free downtown and strategically placed electric vehicle car share lots. Networks are extended to further magnets, allowing for future development along green arteries. This results in the urban plan for the collective city, extending from the downtown to the periphery. This is made possible by diverting the downtown rail lines north between Garrison Junction and Frood Mine and expanding and relocating the rail lands to Algo Station. This allows local goods to be shipped in and out from Algo Station and easily distributed throughout the city using a single low-frequency rail line. These new green networks retrofit existing rail lines, connecting to existing and new points of interest distributed throughout Sudbury and the surrounding area. This can be achieved through a phased approach that begins by diverting the cargo rail lines and continually developing networks and magnets in conjunction with regreening. We can then foster a connected city with a carless downtown by 2050. Simple development guidelines act as tools to help achieve this. This includes converting downtown vehicular parking lots and roofs to parks, implementing a carless downtown by developing green networks, building low to mid-rise architecture along the axes to create comfortable, unobtrusive edge conditions. Within the downtown boundaries, mid to high-rise architecture can reside, and neighborhoods outside the downtown can be developed as mixed-use communities, closing off select minor roads. These street sections demonstrate these ideas. You can see how major streets are no longer automobile-centric. Trees and greenscapes act as visual and auditory shields, including inducing a calmer urban environment. Daylit creeks, generous bike lanes, and walking trails promote a healthy, active environment and sustainable lifestyle. These networks and magnets work together with local resources to create a closed-loop, self-sufficient community. The site of the old water tower and Reservoir Hill have been identified as potential water hubs, which integrate water storage and distribution with recreation in the form of bathhouses and saunas. The site behind Brady Mall adapts the housing project put forth by Kamic Developments and treats this as an affordable housing and agriculture hub. Living is coupled with local harvesting, recreation, and dining. The Southeast Rail Yard is converted into a bioremediation facility that uses local waste from building materials and agriculture to produce biofuel, which powers the light rail transit vehicles. Lumber and biomass magnets are at the heart of the city. Wood manufacturing and innovation takes place as a backdrop to the new rail yard park. Lumber milling is paired with a maker and education space, with the resulting wood pellets easily moved to the neighboring biomass energy facility that's paired with a local theater where all processes are on display, combining production with recreation, economy with community. We visualize these ideas in Sudbury and start to see a city that functions as a holistic system, a collective form. Greenway communities with neighborhood commons support a vibrant and sustainable urban life. Here you can see this community has elected to use their commons as a green space and a coffee shop. Resource magnets merge industry with public space, connecting people with the land, resources, and recreation. They implement ideas about shared ownership, giving agency back to the local community. Decommissioned rail cars are left on the tracks and transformed into retail space for markets. The old rail yard is converted to public gathering and event space where locals and visitors take part in the annual Christmas market, where they buy and sell goods that emerge from community commons. The old rail lands, now reinvigorated as Rail Yard Park, is the central point of the city. It is renewed with green space and public amenities as it becomes a perfect destination for respite and a hot spot for hosting events, gatherings, and festivals. Locals and visitors flock to this hub as it intertwines industry with community. I want to sincerely thank you for this amazing opportunity to contribute to the future of Sudbury. I hope if nothing else, I've planted a seed that we can build off for a brighter future. In the end, we're all players on the same team, working together to build the collective city. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jesse. And right on time, too. Very nice. I'd like to invite the panelists to make comments or ask questions of Jesse at this point.
Jesse, hi, this is Dee Dee Taylor-Eustace, and I wanted to first congratulate you. And second of all, I think that the concept of your collective city that I found so powerful was that you did such a fantastic analyzation of what existed today. And you went back, and your concept of magnets and connecting the magnets, I thought actually was quite profound, and it developed this layering fabric that ended up in the end reinterpreting what Sudbury was yesterday and what it could be today. So I enjoyed the magnets, and I thought it was interesting how you sort of went through the analysis and got to things like the rail yard park or the carless city. So I thought the images were provocative, and I felt the indoor spaces, which you really require, obviously, in Sudbury because of the weather. I like the organic growth versus sort of, the massive sort of urban city move, like a Central Park, et cetera. Or if you look at, the Champs-Elysees, that I felt that this was organic and it led to very unique spaces.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Mhm.
if I may. So great presentation. Congratulations on being here. I agree with Dee Dee that you captured a lot of what Greater Sudbury has to wrangle with today. I also want to say that the idea of adding bathhouses, saunas, and hot springs is fine by me. I found a couple things interesting choices. The intention of the super blocks was to develop micro communities geared towards shared ownership rather than individualism, but they still appeared to be planning on bulldozing significant sections of the city. I was wondering if that's the best course of action, and also if you could elaborate on the commons idea. For us, they appear only as blank boxes. And so what was your idea of implementing those commons throughout the downtown Sudbury area and vicinity?
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of the super block, it's not necessarily a redevelopment. A lot of it is taking kind of existing neighborhoods and the idea of sort of closing off some of the streets, so it's less everyone driving to their house and their parking lot, and this idea that kind of the ownership of the space and the yard can sort of expand beyond just your sort of idea of your own just house. So it's sort of this idea of closing off some of the streets, and then in areas that need development, it can be sort of mixed use developments of different typologies and scales. So I think that's also a way to encourage sort of community within those sort of micro blocks, and it allows also it also encourages sort of an idea about less automobile transportation, where there can be designated car share lots around these communities, so it's less about you're getting out of your house and going to your car and driving where you need to go. And then in terms of the commons, some of the final images, I think, represent them well, in that it's these same similar micro communities have the opportunity to have sort of shared space in these sort of mixed use communities, where it could be just a large park that they all contribute to, or some agricultural land, or a cafe, a coffee shop, some small sort of studio or maker space. So just something that isn't so much pre-planned by the sort of designer or architect, it allows the kind of smaller community to have some agency and engagement into what they feel would best suit their community. And then collectively, it means there's all these different smaller communities that have the opportunity to contribute different things to the sort of macro community as a whole.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments at this point?
Sure.
Bruce, yeah?
I really liked this a lot, and congratulations. Really impressive work. For me, the interesting thing was the comprehensivist integration of ecological and economic activities, and really sort of bringing those worlds together. And what was very interesting, I think, I think over time would develop, the work, as the work got developed further, would be even more interesting, is the kind of inputs becoming outputs becoming inputs, where the output of one process or one industry becomes an input for another. And I think one of the greatest challenges that we face globally is the kind of silo thinking that where each industry has its own input and the output is waste. And I think what you've started to do is really kind of weave those together, where an output becomes an input for another ecological and cultural and economic activity, which I liked quite a lot. I thought overall very nice, and what you can see developing, it's still, I think, nascent, but really impressive, is a kind of unique strategic idea for Sudbury. That is the kind of unique combination of these things that is really, of this place, which I think is ultimately what a city wants to accomplish long term.
Thank you.
Marianne, did you want to speak, or you want to wait for next?
No, I agree with all of the comments, and I think that's just, we spent time looking at all of the submissions, and I think the way you have approached it, almost as as a fabric laid over the city, is really interesting. It doesn't segregate; it actually integrates. I think it's removing the proposition to take the rail line out. I think it's very elegantly done. Are you a team of one?
Yes, yeah, it's just me.
Well, that's great. You really did a great job. Well
Thank you.
done.
Very impressive.
Just
Yeah.
to add,
Well, for a solo act, I thought there were 12 people behind you. So, and I do want to stress, I really, I'm trying to keep each project separate. And I would really say that this magnet idea was a very strong image. And I love the fact I thought of it, taking a husk of corn or, a cattle or something. And there was very little waste product. And I think in your diagrams, it was a circle. It also could have been reversed. So there was this real, idea of this circle never ending, almost like infinity. So good job, Solo. Wow.
thank you. I think it's really important to think about these larger systems and cycles, and I think we have to all kind of work together to think about, a world we want to live in where the environment and the economy are all sort of working together, and they're not, we can appease all the stakeholders and everyone can sort of ideally invest in it and invest in a brighter future.
It's Peter. I did like your presentation. I actually think it's probably realistic, which I always like to see. I certainly like the idea of you having light rail lines, because that presumably going eventually to all parts of Sudbury, because that will be a great contribution. And I like the fact you hadn't got rid of the rail area completely, because I presume, but so I'm going to ask you that you would see that the rail area would be a transportation interchange area, including the possibility of train service to Toronto and elsewhere, because I do believe that trains are going to come back as we try to get carbon neutral.
Thank you.
Was that behind your idea, or did you see having transportation outside the city as being completely separate?
No, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think rail lines are obviously a way to go in the future. And I mean, I'm all about, as you can tell, eliminating carbon economies and the automobile, like in the urban environment. And I think having easy transportation throughout, you know, the GTA and out to Northern Ontario will happen sooner than later, and people will begin to migrate north, and there will be probably an influx of more people moving out there. So I think, you know, I think right now having the cargo rail run through the city is obviously something that I want to sort of open up and have that space more sort of given back to the community. And but certainly something to consider, definitely.
I appreciate all the comments, and thank you. I want to thank you, Jesse, very much for your presentation and for kicking off the presentations. So just to remind people, that was team 0351, and that is the presentation by Jesse Martin of Collective City of Canada. Before moving on to the next team, I just wanted to give a shout out to some of the sponsors of this competition: the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce, Studio 123, Northern Ontario Society of Architects. I'd like to give a shout out to Rob and Cheryl McEwen, and of course to the McEwen School of Architecture. Also, just a reminder that the website that you need to go to in order to register your vote for the People's Choice is sudbury2050.ca. And that is a voting process that is on until tomorrow night. Very short compared to the American elections. All right, so now moving on to team number 2. I'd like to invite to the stage, the virtual stage, team 0452, Green Railway Connecting People. This is the team from Romania, and presenting tonight is Christian Ovidiu Pavel. Welcome, Christian.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. Well, my name is Christian Ovidiu Pavel, and I was born in Romania. And actually, I graduated 2 weeks ago in Italy, in Rome, at the Sapienza. I have an approach of architecture like architecture for the living, for the people, and for the nature. And that's it. I have a video. And Bill, can you please make the video? Thank you very much. The architecture is made for life. Its purpose is make life better. It's make life happening. It's a connection between people, bringing them together. It's a connection with nature, letting it inside. In 2050, good.
Hey, Bill, there's no sound, eh?
For me, architecture is about life. Well, I didn't see it very well, but if you want, you can find it on YouTube.
Christian, I think we did see it, especially once we got the audio going, and we certainly got your very last line, very powerful. I want to turn it over to the panelists. Any comments, questions, Marianne?
Well, I think it's wonderful. It was a kind of your wild ambition, sort of set you apart from many of the more rational and processed. But I think the big idea of using public land and actually making this kind of, very animated thread that rolls through the landscape, it sort of speaks to a kind of visionary thinking, which I think allows us to open our minds in terms of what can happen in Sudbury. probably not something that can be implemented tomorrow, but it actually sort of sets a kind of a vision for how a sustainable future might, the building materials, the ambition to be green, integrating all of the uses, residential and commercial and social, cultural. I think it's really a catalyst, so it provides a kind of an image of a catalyst for reanimation. So I think it is the icon. You did do the iconic, and I think it made a great contribution to the competition. So, and
Thank you very much.
joyful too, very joyful. So thank you for working on your film. I know you did quite a bit of work since you actually animated the film, and you kind of layered in some more, which I think was actually kind of enriched it as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very beautiful words.
This is Dee Dee, and I just went off video because I was losing of the connection. So if I repeat, I'm sorry. This is one of my favorite projects, and I loved your aspirational. I love the fact that you took the Canadian landscape and you basically architecturally designed your architectural building. And when you said architecture is life, so the kind of trees versus the snow, and being from Romania, for me, it was very sort of Singapore-ish, the large trees, Bilbao-ish, you build it, they will come. And I think within our previous discussion, some people were, well, this is maybe too much. And yet for me, I could watch your video over and over again because I'm an architect. So I love that you made this beautiful piece, and there was an entwine of what could happen, whether it was a residence or an office. And as a Canadian, you captured for me not the rolling landscape of Sudbury, the trees. So this inspired me, and I think pieces of this could happen, and that this would then become an icon, and it would be an iconic northern city that other people would visit. So almost one of my favorites. So thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. You don't know how this means to me. Very beautiful words. Thank you.
Bruce, go ahead.
Bruce.
I was going to say that I have a kind of conflict with proposal. I really love the challenging, innovative, the kind of ambition, visionary dimension of it. I think it's really good to bring that to the conversation, to say, who are we? Can we imagine at this kind of scale? Can we think about this? And I thought it was, obviously very beautifully done. The challenge I have with it, the kind of struggle that I have, is that it's a kind of singular gesture. It's a singular kind of ambitious gesture. And I think that the reality of our urban future is a much more diverse, a diverse future and a diverse kind of ecosystem. So I love, so I'm torn in this way. I love the ambition and the beauty of it, and the kind of that kind of singular idea. But I also think that in some ways that's also its undoing. That the kind of the real kind of ecology and diversity that we ultimately need to support your final statement, which I really do believe, which is architecture is about life, and life is diverse. So,
I really agree with you with this. I think this too. I know it's a little bit ambitious, but I was thinking when I do this, Romania 30 years ago was under a dictatorship regime, and now everything is different. Everything in 30 years can change everything. This is why I think humanity in 30 years will be all different. I agree with what you're speaking.
So
Good,
Oh,
good response.
Okay.
You mind if so I mean, it's Sudbury 2050, but it seems a little bit with this one that it's Sudbury 2500. And my issue with this is that it doesn't seem to respond to the circumstances or conditions of Greater Sudbury. I mean, you talk of creating an identity from the unique architecture, but how would anyone know that they're even in Greater Sudbury? I mean, this could be any city on earth to me. And in terms of the Canadian mountains, I mean, those are actually thousands of kilometers away. And in Ontario, the highest point is a few hundred meters. So it just, for me, besides the impracticality of it, I find that there's nothing, I don't feel that this application responds to Greater Sudbury and is representative of Greater Sudbury or encourages the local identity or combines with it. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the icon change, the identity change in time. This is what I think. Now, maybe today is not the symbol of Sudbury, but I think after when they did the Eiffel Tower in Paris, everybody hated. And after hundreds of years, it became the symbol of the Paris. I think this is the way. Maybe today is not the symbol of Sudbury, but in 2500, as you said, it should become.
Good answer.
Thank you.
So I love the fact that it was such an imposing, bold statement. It's not about whether it's the mountain, the crevices, the trees. It was an architectural statement and a bold move, whether it be Olmsted or, depending, somebody with the big idea versus, we're comparing the collective city or the ideas what are layered up. So there's something about sort of star architecture or massive interventions that shakes and sees how things would unfold. So maybe this idea of taking a world and developing an icon and placing it somewhere, kind of like a spaceship or kind of a beacon of light that turns into a circle of life that, architecture can transform, and we've seen it transform cities and countries. And so I was very attracted to this particular one because I found it so inspirational. It probably isn't as practical for sure, but I think going back to Marianne's first comments, it made us stop and think and wonder. And for that, I'm thankful.
Thank you very much. Really.
Any other comments? Jeff, did you want to speak?
Oh, I did, thank you.
Be Jeff McIntyre. Sorry, we have two Jeffs.
Sorry. We get that at meetings of the BIA too.
Jeff, we can't hear your audio.
Can't hear you, Jeff.
Your microphone is unmuted according to my screen, but we still can't hear you.
That's good.
Yep.
Well,
Thank you.
I thank you all for that discussion.
Okay, I was going to say something. I'll be short. It's Peter. Actually,
Go ahead, Peter.
I thought those rolling buildings, until you said they represented the mountains of the West, I actually thought they did represent Northern Ontario, particularly the effects following the Ice Age of the rolling hills, and I thought that was very inspirational. And I also like those transportation corridors. You actually took me back to going to Santiago in Chile before COVID, where in fact they are making transportation corridors just like the ones you were talking about in your presentation. So and what more, they're right in the mountains. So I thought that's great. It was actually fitting with Sudbury. We've got smaller mountains.
Thank you very much, sir.
Jeff McCausland, would you like to have a few extra words at this point? Okay. I think that we will go on to the next team. Again, Christian, thank you so much for your submission. And let's remember the team number from Romania to allow for the people's choice. Again, the number is 0452, and that's the Green Railway Connecting People from Christian of Romania.
It was really a good talk. I think I learned something today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to, again, acknowledge another sponsor of this competition, the Northern Society of Architects, which is a chapter of the OAA. I just want to make sure that we understand that they are one of the competition sponsors. We're going to now move on to team 1478, and this team is called Constellation Sudbury, a dreaming city. Rêver la ville. It's the team from France, and je vous invite. En première, je crois qu'on a Gail and Elise who will be speaking and presenting this evening. Welcome.
Thank you.
Bienvenue.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Gaël.
And my name is Elise.
We are students in our last year of architecture degree in Strasbourg. Our project is Urban Constellation, Sudbury, a Dreaming City. This is a great opportunity for us to work on a Canadian subject, such as the future of Sudbury City Centre for 2050.
During the whole process of the project, we saw that Sudbury had several topics that were really interesting. We discovered its history, its landscape, its inhabitants, and we saw a great potential for our project.
At a smaller scale, we saw Sudbury as an archipelago of isolated objects. We use them as potential in the city, like the presence of the train tracks in the city center, the abundance of the parking lots, presence of empty or 4-second spaces, proximity with nature.
At a larger scale, we saw that Sudbury shows a land of potentials also. The city of Sudbury is a main urban area in the territory. It is also a central point in Canada, accessible from bigger cities. It can become a point of attractivity. Sudbury has a rich landscape composed of forests and lakes that must be preserved. But we also saw the impact of the city lights at night on its surroundings.
Today, if we look at the sky of Sudbury at night, we can observe a light dome above the city. The starry sky is invincible. This is light pollution. Our goal is really simple. We want to give to Sudbury a starry sky for 2050.
Behind a childish goal hides different scopes. We want to rethink our relationship to the environment. We want to bring awareness to the citizen about the beauty of the surrounding landscape. We promote participatory politics so citizens can act and see all the changes in the city. We also want to develop a new economy with dream tourism. It will bring people from all around the country and elevate Sudbury as an example for the whole Canada and enhance the local economy. This will change the lifestyle of Sudbury inhabitants. It will bring resilience, think about conception, give a collective goal for the community, and bring joy and poetry in this strange COVID era.
For this work, we set several tools. For us, we have a multidisciplinary work. Urban design, architecture, and landscape are treated as equals. It is like a toolbox that we use during the process. So we use some traditional tools like design or traditional planning, but also a more atypical tools such as poetry.
This is how we organize our project, a three-part phasing. Phasing allows us to think the changes of the city gradually. These three parts are quite flexible. It allows changes through the process. They shape also the project as a story.
So this is the first step. In this first step involves creating meaningful buildings in the city, a system of acupuncture that will use potential and acts on its surroundings. These acupunctures are placed in empty, atypical, or unique places. These buildings are supporting programs that will raise awareness in environmental protection. For us, protecting is communicate, manage, limit, observe, produce, educate, study, and live.
To do so, we thought of different kinds of programs, such as a greenhouse to produce, an observation tower to observe, a natural science museum to educate. Each building uses a simple post and beam constructive system in wood, enhancing local production. The natural plan allows a great flexibility for the program inside. This step is a starting point for the project to open the eyes of the inhabitants to the beauty of the landscape and prepare the next stages of the project. All of this gravitates around the main element of the city center, the train tracks.
For the second step, we consider that the existing train tracks will be relocated in a new place. We would like to reuse this space as a public park and bring landscape in the heart of the city. This new green space reunites the northern and the southern part of the city center. It is composed of two parts on the print of the original train tracks.
Each one works on the same system. We managed to access the park through transversal circulation and on the pointy ends. The landscaped strips follow the original layout of the rails. Limits are treated with housing on the southern side and on the northern side with the touristic train. Also, the park is equipped with many facilities, covered halls, a stadium, sports ground, and playgrounds. These objects will bring surprises in the path of the visitors.
This system was very interesting because it brings complexity and creates a rich environment. All the strips are different. One can be for water, another one for pine trees or short plants. Sometimes the strips are interrupted by playground or equipment. It brings diversity when they are next to one another. We keep a touristic train line so people can come and visit the surroundings. New housing facilities will give people a view of the park that will give them an incredible lifestyle in the center of Sudbury. So this park isn't just a green place. We can play, take a walk, have fun, or live. So we can spend the entire day enjoying nature.
This park is an important part of the project. We see it as a living organism with its own biodiversity. It helps the city to cool down. This is also a big free space in the city center to create events and opportunities, and maybe one night observe a shooting star.
Now that we have prepared the city to welcome nature in its core, we can turn down the light. It's time to regulate the light pollution in the city to have a better vision of the sky at night. We use a simple grid of the city and put particular street lamps at intersection. All of that specific point can be linked by tourism promenade and create constellation in the city.
We designed a street lamp so it can follow the instruction of the International Dark Sky Association, which are put light only when needed, only light the area that needs it, be no brighter than necessary, minimize blue light emission, and be fully shielded. It must point downwards.
With this step, we want to question the importance of lighting every corner of the city. We want to give some rules to be more resilient and efficient. We decided to put light where it was needed, That is to say, to secure dangerous points and to allow night activity.
We created constellation walks to bring new possibilities to the city. This is a new way to create streets with their own name and identity. They are all unique. For example, they can be pedestrian only. We can plant more trees, set a new urban furniture, and create space for new plaza. This will bring new attractivity for the shops. All parts of the city center are crossed by a constellation, and everything is connected together. These paths are designed to respect the sky and also keep the night activity in the city.
So to conclude, we set a simple goal, but it needs a lot of time and energy. We know that this is a dreaming way to think about the city. This is a dream, but this is possible. We learned that the city of Sherbrooke, Quebec, tries to create the first urban oasis of starry sky. This contemporary project offers poetic solutions to the current environmental issues.
So this is what we dream for Sudbury in 2050. Thank you so much for your attention. We would be pleased to answer any question in French or in English.
Thank you very much.
Thank you et merci, Gaël and Elise. I will hand it over to the panelists. Some comments, some thoughts, some poetry.
So I'll start. So I wanted to again congratulate you both and thank you. I had, when initially looked at this, I had this Van Gogh feeling of the Starry Night. And what I found provocative about it was that your imagery was almost like Van Gogh paintings. One of the things of having an aspirational to sort of, poetry and to create joy and poetry in a city, the global reach for me was the constellations, that all of us around the globe at the same time or different times around the globe can look and see the constellations. So I found that a very sort of unifying idea of how to reach out globally, that really wasn't through architecture per se, but the goal of giving back these starry nights. So I really found this so poetic and provocative, and I wanted to ask you if Van Gogh was any of your inspirations.
Since Van Gogh is a French artist, he's from Netherlands, but he's a French artist. We obviously know his paintings. It was not actually one of our thoughts that we didn't thought about Van Gogh. We were inspired by a video from one of our friends that is really sensible to the night, to the dark sky. And so we were inspired by this video. It's only in French, I'm sorry for that, but this is what was for us the inspiration. Do you have something to add?
Yes, maybe about our images. So I think we use that like a way to promote poetry and to not to create some realistic view, but to propose some
some blur.
Some blur, yes, about the project, and to let imagination create the project.
That was much accomplished, and we spoke about it in prior discussions about this ethereal project that really, versus hard lines and big movements. It was a very soft and poetic approach, so that I think you accomplished your goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to add to some of these comments? Bruce.
I want to also congratulate you on such a beautiful project. It's so interesting to realize that so much of what we do thinking about urbanism is so technical. It's so it's so quantitative, and really like all about the kind of technical dimension of the work. And I love the toolkit that you propose that includes poetry as part of the tools, because I think that what you've shown is that this competition is such a wonderful opportunity to think beyond what we already do, to think beyond what we would otherwise proceed with. And I think just introducing the idea of the night sky, I mean, it's a very special thing in the North, how beautiful the sky can be. And I think that kind of introducing that idea and the idea of a poetic life, to think about it as a lifestyle and a living organism. I mean, these are just wonderful ideas to introduce into the conversation. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I would second that. The idea too that narratives, that creating storylines that can weave through and create a vision for a city. And I think that's in an ideas competition like this, that's something that should bring inspiration to, I mean, part of doing this competition was trying to open up the spirit of Sudbury and see what's possible within a city where we are kind of collectively living out our lives. And so to bring that inspiration and also to tie it to a kind of sustainable vision. If we reduce the amount of light we're reflecting into the sky, we reduce the amount of energy that we're using, we actually see in less brightly lit spaces, and we have a different sensibility about who we are. So I think, for me, that storyline, I concur with the other panelists, but that storyline, that narrative that you tell should be something that I think, remains in for those who hear it, remains in the hearts of people in Sudbury. And I think it's kind of amazing. I never dreamed you would be in Paris or in Romania, that I don't know why, I didn't really think of that. But thank you for kind of reaching out, and this is the kind of global discussions that we need to have. So thank you for reaching out with that sensibility and bringing it to Sudbury. I think the idea that Sherbrooke, I know Sherbrooke, Quebec, but I think that dark sky policy is really interesting because they're a city again that has lost it was on a river, textile mills and Canadian textile was there, and then they lost their industry, and so they're looking for what's the post-industrial. The industrial age lasted a long time, so that these ideas that give a sort of post-industrial vision, but ties it to a sustainable vision for a city, I think are really important. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have
just one. Oh.
Go ahead.
Maybe Dee briefly, and then Peter.
I was just going to just make a quick comment on the buildings that you looked at empty spaces, and then you were putting these iconic buildings and you were doing them in wood and post and beam, and I felt that did contextualize and relate to Sudbury itself. So especially even the McEwen School of Architecture, which is design build, and I just wanted to point that out.
I was going to say, what a splendid idea, because it conveys to me the idea of a clean city with clean air. So you can actually see the stars compared to what we used to be able to see in Sudbury when we had lots of air pollution. I think it would be a great image to say, look, come to Sudbury, see that we do have clean air, see the stars, and see these constellations. Right from downtown Sudbury. And I think we go a step further in that, and I don't expect you to know too much about this, but our native people see the constellations in a different way. So to incorporate some of their ways of looking at the constellations would be an added value.
I just want to comment on this, if that's okay, and say, as a musician, I greatly appreciate that the aesthetic is kind of the driving force, and yet all the technical aspects are also there underneath, but they kind of blend into the aesthetic, which to me is a sign of great proficiency. I find myself drawn, it's very whimsical, some really beautiful images and excellent ideas. The description you have and the idea for the rail yard park reminds me of Valencia, Spain, where they converted an old moat that surrounded the city center into a linear park with similar facilities. And I love as well the idea that you had for a purpose-built space for citizen consultation. That's something that I think is going to be important in the years ahead. I will say also, congratulations. thank you for being here in the middle of the night.
It's okay. It's only midnight.
And I'm sure you'll be happy, the city plug here, that we are most of the way through installing 11,000 new LED streetlights this year that are much more dark sky friendly and far more directional. And en termes de poésie, je vous recommande de lire les œuvres de Patrice Desbiens. Et vous pouvez aussi mieux connaître le Sudbury parce qu'il y a un livre de poésie nommé Sudbury qui est incroyable.
Super, merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you everybody for all your comments. Obviously, one of the great hopes of any ideas competition is that you move past banality of street design or measurements of curb heights to go beyond into the realm of the poetic, and also to understand that citizens deserve poetry in their cities. So thank you. I think we will now move on to the next submission. And just a reminder, we've just heard from Elise and Gail from France, and that was team 1478.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now bonsoir. We'll move now to team 4245. And I would like to invite the designers behind Bold and Beautiful. The team is from Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong. It's a large it's a large team, including I will just read. Well, I'm going to just plow through all your names: Brian Zhen Hao Go, Charmaine Chua Wei Ying, Chun Ho and Christopher Wong, Nabhat Sorn Na Talang, Rachel Yi and Kiam, and Tessa Hugh Jitan. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, good evening.
Great to see you and have you here with us. Please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, can you see my screen? Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, firstly, for giving us the opportunity to share our vision with you today. My name is Charmaine, and with me are my 5 teammates, Rachel, Tessa, Chris, Brian, and Ploy. And we're actually a group of students. We're an international team of students with diverse experiences that we met earlier this year at the Bartlett School of Planning in London. And during lockdown, when we came across this competition, it just seemed like the perfect opportunity to learn and meet people and compete on this world stage. But the problem is none of us had ever been to Sudbury, and we didn't want to plan a city that could be just anywhere. It had to be a city that was, based on what's actually happening in Sudbury today. And so we gathered as much information as we could about Sudbury's official plans, its heritage, its economy, its population, and these ideas all form the foundation of things that we're going to share with you today. And I just wanted to touch on 2 key findings in particular. Firstly, is that Sudbury is facing an issue of an aging population with an increasing population median age. And in fact, by 2036, that 1/3 of the people will be over the age of 55 and 1/5 over the age of 70. Now, what we think this means is that any vision for 2050 must take into account all these people as well. And we need to develop more inclusive and livable precincts and new housing typologies. So we can't just have a very flashy, youth-centric urban core, but it's something that has to take care of the most vulnerable of our residents. And there's already an urgent need to relook housing options because waiting lists for long-term care homes in Sudbury are very long. And this means that it's not a sustainable solution. And we need a totally new way of thinking about housing our aging population, and not just getting them a bed, but also thinking about a livable neighborhood where they can access nature and community spaces and social services. Now, the second point is that Sudbury is still a very predominantly car-centric city with low public transport usage in comparison, benchmarking against other Canadian cities. So one big problem with the existing transport network is that of disconnection, especially around the downtown core. And that's why connectivity is such a big part of our plan for a city that embraces healthy, active, and green mobility.
We envision a bold and confident city which enhances Sudbury's natural beauty to provide attractive lifestyles for people of all ages. To do this, we set out the following visions. Firstly, we want a city of action where active mobility is promoted with an attractive public realm and safe streets, aiming to reduce private vehicle usage. Multi-generational precincts and inclusive city planning fuels our vision for a city for all, which is especially important in the coming years. A city in nature reflects our biophilic design and commitment to environmental sustainability in architecture and the public realm to improve both the built environment and the health and wellness of the people. And finally, we envision a city with a soul, representing and bringing forth Sudbury's cultural identity and arts heritage, promoting creative spaces for meaningful interaction. To do this, our proposal interlaces these ideas in the scales of the city, the district, and the street.
We envision Sudbury to be a connected and interactive city that goes beyond the downtown area. We want to reshape Sudbury into a matrix of solitude and activities where anyone can work, live, and play. We aim to deliver this by increasing the interaction within the key hub of the city and organize placemaking initiatives and events to incorporate the arts and the culture in the built environment. To promote the connectivity between Sudbury urban core and the rest of the city, we want to introduce an integrated, convenient, and easy-to-use public transport network. We propose new bus line which will connect the downtown area to Sudbury Junction, the train station, and the airport to facilitate the integration of various modes of transport. This will also help discourage private car usage, complementing with our sustainability goal. To help create a car-free city downtown, we decided to implement car parks at the fringes and to encourage citizens to use public transport to get around. In line with our vision to preserve Sudbury's natural beauty, we want to create a comprehensive green and blue network with the twin aims of sustainability and enhancing the public realm. The green elements include green spaces, parks in the downtown area, deep green street, and community garden. And the blue elements will include water-themed spaces and urban streams. Furthermore, we do not want to introduce just any random green strategy. We want the strategies to also enhance and complement Sudbury culture and unique identity. The Cultural Greenway aims to bring new meaning and give life to currently vacated rail land and to provide a vital connection from the downtown to Ramsey Lake. The area will provide space for social, recreational, and cultural activities and green spaces to the residents.
At the district scale, the downtown is divided into 4 clusters, creating distinct areas with unique identities. The Research and Excellence Hub will be the center of the city's innovation in mining and forestry, facilitating knowledge spillovers and enhancing job opportunities. The Retail and Residential Cluster will support vibrant and affordable downtown living, with new built and retrofitted mixed-use housing that is inclusive and affordable. The pedestrian-friendly downtown core will buzz with activity, with shops and cafes lining active and revitalized streets, while the cultural cluster will bloom with public art and bolster Sudbury's cultural economy. Outside the downtown core, neighborhood precincts will also be livable, vibrant, and walkable. These age-friendly precincts will feature new-built senior-friendly housing typologies alongside a network of pedestrianized or shared streets, public spaces, green corridors, and social infrastructure such that healthcare and other amenities are easily accessible to the elderly.
At the building and street scale, we want to create compact mixed-use environments that are great places to live, work, and play. COVID-19 has highlighted the issues of highly segregated land uses. Our proposals will encourage walkability and accessibility as amenities are brought closer to home, strengthening neighborhood identities. Next, we also want to build community spaces that drive sustainability efforts. Built on the principles of biophilic urbanism, we want to introduce quality green infrastructure and renewable energy implementation. We want to encourage greater use of timber and recyclables in buildings and urban furniture, and empower the community to cultivate green roofs, which could also serve as urban farms. To promote vibrancy, we want to encourage new ways of moving around this beautiful city. We want to encourage higher levels of walking and cycling. This can only happen if travel routes are comfortable. Thus, we aim to create pleasant and exciting shared spaces with green infrastructure and urban furniture connecting various mixed-use buildings together. Now, it's very important that we encourage community-led initiatives where people can all play an active role in shaping their built environment. Community events can encourage interesting facades with varying colors to add a renewed sense of vibrancy. A highly pedestrian-centric street will allow for informal ground-up initiatives such as pop-up parklets and informal markets to be held at various times of the year. And lastly, we want to encourage a city known for its arts and culture. Murals, street installations, and lighting are small interventions that can have a big impact. We want Sudbury to be unique, not a replica of other major cities. Flexible open spaces allow for events to celebrate Sudbury's diverse art and culture, and as public spaces for people of all ages.
With our vision and design principles, what we aspire to build ultimately is a Sudbury for all. To achieve this, we will undergo a vigorous public engagement exercise, allowing for any potential issues and concerns to be flagged and addressed at an earlier stage. We aim to adopt a people-centric approach of community engagement to gather views and their individual contributions to the shared visions of Sudbury's future. Ultimately, this is a planning vision that is shaped for the people, by the people of Sudbury. We also want to acknowledge the rich history and diversity that has heavily influenced the Sudbury that we see today. And we strive to promote equitable development as much as possible, which is why we have gone above and beyond to introduce 4 carefully designed stages of continued public engagement, ranging from formulating design principles to regular reviews upon full implementation, each with its intended objectives and outcomes. We'll also be introducing innovative activities such as community asset mapping, social media photography competitions, and walking tours to not only consult, but also to actively engage a wide and comprehensive range of stakeholders across the city of Sudbury. We've taken inspirations from successful public engagement exercises both in Canada and globally. For example, the Places for People downtown campaign in Vancouver, in order for us to build a true urban commons in Sudbury. All in all, in conclusion, throughout our presentation, we hope that the jury, as well as everyone in the audience, can understand more about and share our vision of a bold and beautiful Sudbury by 2050, something that the 6 of us here all hold dear and truly believe in. Thank you very much, and we welcome and value any questions or feedback you may have for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well presented, very well orchestrated from all your spots around the world. I'd like to invite the panel to contribute some thoughts, questions, some ideas, just feedback.
Well, I guess I'll hop in there. So you said that data is the key at the beginning of this, and I really believe that you're right, because you've been able to understand so many of our local realities through your research that in the creation of this submission. So congratulations. I really appreciate the vision that you've established here, and it really aligns well with our City of Greater Sudbury vision of a community of communities. Your bold and beautiful highlights many of our local needs. The 24-hour downtown core is something that Jeff McIntyre has been fighting for years. And I believe that a critical part of our future is ensuring that all the different towns that make up Greater Sudbury are livable neighborhoods that are well connected to the core. So kudos to you for identifying that, because that's something that I'm constantly working towards on the city council, and something that I believe is critical to the future of our community. There was one issue with the application that you may not have been able to identify while you're an ocean away. That's with Noland Creek. I used to live across the road from Noland Creek, and I can tell you that the flow is quite variable. It's highly dependent on spring melt and rains. And so at times the blue line in your application might be quite brown. Not that that's necessarily a problem. That might be a good thing for everyone to understand the local kind of side of things in natural's world. I love the community fireplaces idea. I'm like, okay, next meeting, let's get one of these put in. How are we going to set that up? You know, that's the kind of thing that, considering our circumstances, you know, sometimes the thing right in front of your face you don't see. It's a great idea. And most of all, I appreciate the focus on placemaking, public spaces, and celebrating both our local landscapes, natural character, and our heritage. To me, those are what I'm looking for in these applications. So great work.
Thanks, Jeff.
I wanted, yeah. I will ask if back in Hong Kong and in Singapore, if you have soap operas, there's a very popular soap opera that was called The Bold and the Beautiful. So I'm not sure if you have that, but interesting enough, when you said city for all, city in nature, and city with soul, and you use the word all, so I actually did see this soap opera kind of going between all the ages, multi-generational, and there would be this thread of sort of human and really family relations and a very large community base. My big question, and I had with this proposal, was really the 4 distinct clusters. And sometimes I think with urban design, that's one approach, and the other is very much integrated, all different districts, so that you don't have one empty during the morning or one empty during the night. So the question for one of the people, or one of the 6 or 7 of you, is explain a bit more, please, for me, for the 4 distinct clusters.
Yeah, so the 4 distinct clusters are meant to have different identities, and part of the proposal is really to encourage mixed-use development. And so having activity in the public realm throughout the day, the week, and the year, even with different seasons, is definitely something we want to ensure. So we're not trying to segregate users so that, activity is only concentrated in one district at one time, but we want to create sort of different districts with different identities, and also to capitalize on economies of agglomeration to drive industry, for example.
Debbie, did you want to add anything at this point? Maybe just unmute first.
That definitely helps. I want to congratulate the presenters. I think this was a very, very good presentation. I certainly could identify with it, and I congratulate you on your vision. I very much appreciate the fact that you did your research and your homework. You found out what Sudbury currently is, and then perhaps a bit about what our past has been, and then developed a vision for what our future could certainly be. I think your future vision is very realistic. I can see it happening within the next 30 years, and I certainly appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge that you took Sudbury's demographics into consideration. The fact that we do have an aging population, currently a very, very slow growth population as well. I think we're making headways in terms of growing our immigrant population, and hopefully they will remain citizens of our city, and we will grow our population that way. But I think that's a very important part that you've included in your presentation that perhaps others haven't. I also like your new housing topography, the fact that you've integrated both a place of work, a place of retail, and a place of human interaction. I love the green space ideas. I love the fact that it truly is a vision for all 4 seasons that we have here in Sudbury. So for all of those reasons and many more, I want to thank you and congratulate you.
And
thank you
just
so much for your kind words. Yeah.
For the record, can you let us know, I understand that you all met at Bartlett School of Architecture in London at UCL. What year are you in now? Are you graduating? What tell us a little bit more.
Yep, so just a correction, actually we're all urban planning students. So I think we're very different from many of the participants here today. 5 of us, everyone except Charmaine, we're all in our third and final year at the Bartlett School of Planning. We met Charmaine when she was here on exchange with us last year. And we worked on a few projects together, and we have all became good friends since. Yep.
Excellent. We need to move on to the
okay,
next.
can I just say, I'll just
Yes,
be very short.
Peter?
I just want to say this, I love learning a lot about Sudbury, which I didn't know before. So that's great. So congratulations on all your research. And I think this project is actually very doable and practical for 2050. And I hope that you could come visit Sudbury sometime in the future to really see how your research and what Sudbury is really like on the ground.
Yeah, I think we all certainly hope so. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. So that was, just for the record, the Bold and Beautiful team, team 4245. Again, if you're thinking about People's Choice and need to know that number, team 4245. And now we're going to move on directly to our final fifth team. Team 5213 is called Restitched, and presenting this evening will be Aidan Lucas and Maeve MacDonald. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
Okay, so my name is Maeve, and along with my partner Aidan, we have put together a proposal for Sudbury 2050 titled Downtown Sudbury Restitched. Located at the center of Greater Sudbury, the downtown has lost its place amongst the city's tapestry of communities. Greater Sudbury is made up of multiple isolated communities, and within the last 5 years of studying in Sudbury, we have identified these isolated communities. And to name a few, there's New Sudbury, the South End, Coppercliff, Garson, and many more, but each community functions independently with all of one's needs only a short automobile ride away. Static patches have developed, and people tend to not move outside of their neighborhood comfort zone. So where does the historic downtown core sit within this larger tapestry? And more importantly, how do we begin to restitch the downtown to make Sudbury a vibrant, living city? In 2050, the downtown is envisioned as being a canvas on which the city explores how a historically diverse community can embroider a new identity for itself and the city of Greater Sudbury as a whole. Our project addresses the challenge of restitching the core by building upon existing physical and social infrastructure, such as the historic regreening effort, the railways, the mining and lumber industries, the creative arts, the film industry, and the vibrant traditions of the European, Francophone, and Indigenous communities.
This logo represents our concept of restitching. Each colored stitch represents a proposed district, and the green and blue stitches represent unique ecologies that interweave between the 4 districts and extend into the surrounding areas and attempt to reconnect the static patches.
So downtown Sudbury is a worn out, static quilt that is waiting to be repatched, redeveloped, and stitched back together. Within this proposal, we have developed districts and initiatives in the downtown core that do not act as entities, but instead combine and collaborate to develop a stronger overall whole. 4 patches that we will discuss in detail later in our presentation include the Activity District, the Traditional District, the Learning District, and the Innovation District.
We've designed superstack follies that would be dispersed throughout downtown, made from the superstack, a Sudbury icon that is going to be torn down in the near future. This was an icon used to promote regreening in the past, and so we're proposing to use it to promote regreening in the future. These follies are designed as social hubs within the downtown. People working, learning, or visiting various districts can meet and gather in these forums. The follies have different functions: water filtration, experimental agriculture, community murals, movie projections, cafes, and seating spaces.
So along with the follies, this project introduces a green loop of trails that would circle the entire downtown with accessible stitched path systems moving throughout the downtown core and connecting with existing paths. Enhancing our current relationship with water is something this project focuses on. The river water from Junction Creek and Nolan Creek is resurfaced, filtered, and pumped into accessible spaces. Downtown residents can interact and develop a stronger connection with water. The green loop would act as a display of how regreening can be pushed even further. This loop would include growing spaces and community gardens. Some gardens may include traditional Indigenous medicinal plants.
Downtown parking will be centralized into parking garages topped with greenhouses. These greenhouses will grow a variety of produce with a focus on beets to promote a circular road care network system. The salt which poisons the soil beside the roads will be replaced with beet juice, which will nourish the soil.
So now we will begin to walk you through the patches we have developed in detail that are located in the downtown core. And so to begin, we'll talk about our intentions behind the Activity District and the Traditional District. So the Activity District, is viewed in pink on this map, aims to implement a more vibrant and unique infrastructure downtown, promoting tourism with destination-based programming. It will build on existing downtown programs, restaurants, bars, stores, theaters, and art galleries. Our plan is to add to the existing social environment with adaptable reuse and infill projects. And then the Traditional District attempts to reveal and celebrate Indigenous culture in Sudbury. Located at the gateway to the downtown, currently occupied by the transit terminal, the proposal seeks to repatch a site that currently is associated with strong negative perceptions. This patch has been designed to initiate an exchange of knowledge and better understand Sudbury's history before colonial contact in industrial development. So I'll walk you through the two districts. Within the activity district, we have introduced affordable modular CLT housing that has been kept consistent throughout downtown. These designs will incrementally transform existing parking lots. Each affordable housing model is designed with a central outdoor activity space. So this could include a basketball court, skate park, rink, outdoor patios, and gardens that could be programmed in combination with these modular initiatives. The existing arena will be renovated and expanded. Keeping the arena downtown is important within this district as it will assist with keeping the downtown economy alive, supporting local businesses, bars, and restaurants. The CNR station will be renovated to become a year-round market. The Mackey building will become a boutique hotel and artist lofts, and the parking lot that surrounds it will be transformed into an iconic new home for the Art Gallery of Sudbury. And the YMCA will be expanded and opened to Memorial Park, and daylight creeks will flow into pools of water that can be accessed by the community year-round. Highlighting the traditional district, we identified that the existing Indigenous Friendship Center is currently poorly sited and uninviting. So the district will be shaped and designed by local Indigenous people and has the potential to include an Indigenous cultural center, canoe building space, museum, and wellness center. The district is centralized around water. And lastly, Elm Place will be retained but opened up to the streets and renovated to provide a space for shelter and shopping in the harsh Sudbury winter months. The surrounding street edges will be softened.
All right, and I'll be walking you through the Innovation District and the Learning District. The Innovation District, shown here in yellow, was designed to take advantage of the city's industrial roots and the vacant lots adjacent to the existing train tracks. We've designed the district around the idea of reintroducing industry and employment into the downtown core. The working middle class demographic has historically been shrinking, and our goal is to restitch this demographic into the fabric of downtown. There are multiple learning facilities present in downtown Sudbury. The creation of the Learning District, shown here in purple, aims to connect these existing facilities while introducing new programs and spaces. This district will promote intergenerational and creative industry exchange of knowledge. Within this district is envisioned to contain a mass timber lab that will utilize the infrastructure of the adjacent railway, large local labor pool, and the wood expertise of the McEwen School of Architecture to transform lumber from the north into modular CLT construction. The output will serve local affordable housing projects and the mass timber building boom of Southern Ontario. This district will also include labs and warehouses, which will explore environmental initiatives within the urban centers, applied experimentally to downtown Sudbury with the intent to export the ideas to other urban areas. We have envisioned a warehouse which processes locally grown beets into a brine solution that de-ices roads in a way that is more friendly to infrastructure and the environment. This district will also include a new student residence, which will provide housing for students studying in the learning patch. We plan to rebuild the existing library, adding a daycare adjacent to the existing senior center and promoting intergenerational exchanges. Nearby, an abandoned school, which currently houses an indie cinema, will be repurposed as a film school, further strengthening the growing local economy.
So our downtown proposal aims to restitch Sudbury, connect existing programs, implement new ones, and build off of existing infrastructure. All of these patches and stitches overlap to develop a strong, complex, and interconnected quilt. So let's begin restitching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maeve and Aidan. Thank you. Please, over to the panelists. Marianne, do you want to start?
Sure. So that's lovely. I mean, I think you have, the combination of a big idea, the restitching. You obviously know Sudbury well, so you actually used your time on the ground incredibly effectively to look at the pieces and parts of it, and then have real specificity. I think important that you actually identified the arena, which is the hot topic for so many of us, so many of you, as something that could be retained and could be a site of animation and a revenue potential for the city, and something that actually citizens might rally around because of that idea of retaining something in the city. So I think very masterful, beautiful graphics, very simple. Have you worked on this since we saw it the first time? Or is this the original, yeah, nice.
This is the original one.
So sometimes it's interesting because the videos kind of capture a lot, but because the size of the panels translated onto the screen, I think the graphic impact of a review like this is actually quite high. You know, brings a lot more, obviously a lot more focus, and a lot more appreciation. So I think, you know, we have visionary statement, a vision, and we have that restitching, which is the specificity. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you both, because the whole notion of a quilt is the individuality coming together in a collective. And I think your verbiage of innovation, learning, activity, traditional, and you touched upon the Indigenous component that some of the other submissions were not as clear on. And so truly the quilt still, and the restitching, and when you said restitched into the fabric, and that kind of had this image of taking all the history, all, as you said, innovation. You talked about film, you talked about the beats and using that, you know, boiled it down and for removing salt, et cetera, et cetera. Very explicit and very well done. I just wanted to congratulate you both. It really brought to me what Sudbury could do. And we should restitch. You can't throw out the past. So very much enjoyed, and I enjoyed your explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce?
I just wanted to say a couple of things. I think one of the things that I thought was very nice was the kind of district concept. And I think that, you know, in cities of the scale of Sudbury, I think the district idea is really important, that you could actually accomplish critical mass by putting things closely together. That, you know, that you can actually have an entertainment, cultural experience that is really interesting and something that regionally you would want to go to if you focus it and get it dense enough that it achieves a kind of critical mass that in the way that you're suggesting, which I thought was very nice. I have one question, which is, why beats? The beats seem like a funny thing to me.
We'd heard in school and through various ecologists that have come to our school that it's possible to use them to kind of de-ice roads, and that's a pretty big issue in Sudbury with, you know, obviously the extreme winters that they tend to have here, that the roads really take a beating, and all the infrastructure from all the salt, and not even that, but all the runoff from all the salt on the road because of all the rocks goes right into Lake Ramsey, which is the city's water source. So we're kind of thinking, okay, you know, de-icing roads is going to have to be something that keeps going on and on, obviously in the future. So how do we do that in a way that it doesn't harm our water source and it doesn't harm, you know, these regreening efforts that we're proposing around downtown? So this was kind of a solution that we had, and it's kind of funky to see, you know, purple juice being sprayed on the road. I feel like that's pretty fun.
Nice. Very nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you.
The roads really take a beating. It actually is about when it's implemented, generally for it to actually function properly, it's actually a mix of I think it's about half and half salt and traditional and beet juice, and it can be very effective. But beet juice by itself isn't that effective at lower temperatures. You know, city hat. While I'm jumping out, I really love in this one the follies, the Superstack follies. Please, if anyone from Vale is listening, or anyone connected with Vale, give us pieces of the Superstack so that we could do that, because that is such a cool idea.
Here.
Yeah, the learning district. I think that's an idea I hope comes out of this competition and sticks. The plan to rebuild the existing library, to implement a daycare so that it can be surrounded by the Red Oak Village senior facility, which is in construction presently. So those different places can function together and have intergenerational learning. That is a beautiful and important idea, besides the fact that there's been traditionally barriers between the different school boards. And yet in that area, there's 3 high schools that share so much in common. And so the idea of breaking those things down, creating common spaces for them, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful idea. I will also say that you mentioned Roy's Furniture becomes a brewery after more inclusive zoning. Well, thankfully, after Spacecraft had challenges getting theirs, we did tell staff, go update our zoning, and we have achieved inclusive zoning already. So we're already on our way to your vision. My question for you is, why the level of specificity? You have buildings being torn down and changed into something else, and these ideas are seemingly your own, but why take it to that level where you're saying, okay, this is going to be this is going to be this is going to be this, instead of kind of leaving it more of something that can be developed over time? So thank you.
I think for certain program spaces that we've or spaces in general that we program, they rely on one another. So I think identifying that specificity was really important in this proposal, because again, we are proposing these different sort of patches or stitches, but they all sort of interrelate and work together. So for example, that CLT lab, you need that first to create the modular housing. So there's all these relationships. So identifying the specific programs, I think, was really important in this proposal. Just to envision the stitches and how those things can all, work together and be layered together.
It's like how Bruce was saying earlier about the inputs becoming outputs, outputs becoming inputs for the different things. Very cool.
I think also that this is obviously a very informed submission, because you are so close to Sudbury. So it's been very interesting. I would expect this to be more in depth versus maybe, a submission from France or Romania. So I enjoyed that specificity.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to thank Maeve and Aidan again. Thank you very much. And what we've just heard from Team 5213, Restitched, another Canadian submission. And with that, I think it is time to come towards the end of our evening together. I think it's clear that although we've had 5 very unique and remarkably researched and elaborated submissions from 5 teams from across the globe, I think what is, there is a common language. And I feel that one of the most powerful themes of this evening has been connection, and the idea that people working together, learning from each other. We've seen this in a kind of amazing and much coveted exchange of ideas between designers and civic leaders who are all present today. And I think that I'm been particularly impressed by the idea of creating a community of communities, cities of soul, a city of soul, not only for Sudbury, but there have been many strategies that we've discussed and been presented about today that could be applied to other northern cities. City for life, city for people, city for all. And I think that Sudbury, this 2050 competition comes at an incredibly prescient and important time. Sudbury has already healed itself so tremendously since the days when there was the Sudbury unit of pollution, which was a global measurement. And since the time when there were thousands of mining sites that were active within the region. Tremendous healing has already happened. These ideas allow, I believe, the city to go to next level, not just of dreaming, but of actual imagining real visions that could come to land on within Sudbury. And I think that, there's a moral imperative that underwrites a lot of the discussions this evening, the moral imperative to continue the good work that's already happening in Sudbury and allow these ideas to come to fruition through, collaboration and the kind of consensus building that we've already been kind of celebrating this evening. And so I would just like to thank all of the participants, all of the designers, the student teams, all of the juries and civic leaders, because ultimately this is not about everybody paddling their own canoe and going off in separate directions. Reinvention and true healing will never happen that way. It really has to be when we all are paddling together in the same direction. And with that, I'd like to turn over final words to Terry, Terrence Galvin, if you would like to just wrap up the evening. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for moderating. I did want to acknowledge that we're on the Robertson-Huron Treaty of 1850. We recognize also that Laurentian University is located on the traditional lands of the Atikoshing Anishinaabeg, and that the city of Greater Sudbury also includes the traditional lands of the Wanapate First Nation. So Miigwech, when we transitioned early on from one room to the other, I didn't get a chance to say that earlier, but I did want to thank everybody that's presented tonight. I wanted to thank you again, Lisa, for this. We want to also let everybody know that they go on site to vote on the Sudbury2050.ca site, and you've done great, Lisa, in showing repeating the student team numbers. So people can do that until the end of tomorrow. So Tuesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time is when the People's Choice voting for one of the 13 finalists closes. And if we had a minute or two, we did have a couple of questions, Lisa, that came into the Q&A. And then Bill Saunders also, if there was any questions that were coming out of the simultaneous streaming with the Laurentian University YouTube page, we thought we might just wrap up if people have a few minutes with those. Will Moran has asked, I can read the question and then we can see. Will has asked to correct if he's right in that the last presentation being the only one that included Indigenous peoples, adding a vital understanding of the voices from the ground level. It's an open question, Will, so I think we can ask maybe the panelists to comment if there's anything to add. You also had asked a question, half of that was about an earlier comment by Jeff McIntyre on the baggage of Sudbury, so we might entertain those as a dialogue piece.
I'm happy to comment on that.
Yep, go ahead.
I think it's such an important idea and a very good insight. I thought the bold and beautiful, which interestingly is maybe from the farthest perspective, brought the concept of public engagement as part of the design process and really very deliberately introduced a very robust public process into the proposal. And I think for me, one of the most real eye-opening experiences of being part of the MacEwan School has been engaging the Indigenous worldview, which has really kind of blown my mind over the last few years. And I think that would be, that has to be a really important part of this conversation.
Can I ask Jeff? Lisa, you're still moderating, but Jeff McCausland, you wrote about the city of Greater Sudbury's vision, a center of excellence and opportunity, a vibrant community of communities living together. Is that in part, Jeff, a response to the question?
No, sorry. I said that beforehand in response to some of the conversation and what Lisa was saying to sum up all the different submissions and how they all, I like that they all reflect back to the actual, that's the official new vision of the city of Greater Sudbury. But in terms of the question of baggage, it's certainly a loaded statement. I don't think there was any ill intent from other Jeff McIntyre. It's purely the nature of the beast. You can only see from where you are. And, it's funny, people have talked about the arena and it is a controversial thing. And people want to have a new arena to have more events. And it makes you want to scream because I'm a professional musician and I'm like, that's not where you go to see shows. We don't have an 800 to 1,200 seat concert hall. And that's the spot where an arena is going to get 10 to 20 shows a year when a hall is going to have 10 to 20 shows a month. But because that has never been part of the context here, people, it's not really on anyone's radar. It's not necessarily on people's, it's not part of their perspective. And so I think that's kind of the nature of the comment in terms of, well, we can only see from where we are. And if where we are at one point was one of the worst places on earth, there's some older ideas that still need to die before we can move forward in different ways. It's a very interesting circumstance here, I find. But
So
maybe Jeff should speak.
I think, or to build on this Jeff's point, is that I don't think people omitted not doing the Indigenous component. I think that because the last group was truly had more awareness from where they are, they presented that. But I think when you look at the submission from France or Hong Kong or from Romania, they gave a more sort of global approach to a city without doing as many specifics. And I don't think one is better than the other. I think we all have to remember that this is a student submission of ideas, and there's just been some unbelievable ideas. Whether they get into the nitty gritty of it, I think we've got really 5 very strong proposals that it's going to be tough to choose from.
No, thanks for clarifying that, Jeff. I think that was the comment when you talked about the baggage, right? And Will, if you were there online, you may just want to have your own comment for a minute about, is our history our baggage? Would you like to expand on that? You might be on mute, Will.
I don't think Will can respond on audio, Terrence. He would have to, yeah, because it's a webinar.
Okay, people that are the attendees are not. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, thank you. First time experience for this, so. Okay. Well, we may 7:09. We may say thank you to Lisa. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to all the panelists for tonight. Please check the website again at Sudbury 2050 and tune in for tomorrow. Again, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the open category with 8 finalists presenting there as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. Awesome job.
Oh, thanks to you and everybody. Thanks so much.
So much.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Chuck.
Bye, guys. Amazing. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.